Since the very first trailer for Panzer Paladin, the game shot up towards the top of my most wanted list. It looked like everything that I liked in a game. I love retro style graphics, I love chiptunes, I love old school gameplay, I just love games that aren't afraid to be very straightforward in what they're doing. I love games today. I love the games that come out on today's platforms with deep mechanics and super sophisticated stories and all that stuff. I really do appreciate them, but there's just something in me that likes a game when a game is like, okay, here's a jump button and an attack button. You go, play. That's it. I just appreciate that, like, jump right into gameplay and the focus being on gameplay. I just like a game that gives you all-out action like that. So, Panzer Paladin looked exactly like that, and now that I've played through the game in its entirety, I will say that for the most part, that's exactly what you get. I got some other aspects that I didn't even know I would enjoy, and there's a couple little issues I ran across along the way, but overall, I really, really enjoyed the experience. First off, I got goosebumps from the opening movie. It's perfect. It's exactly what I want, or I should say exactly what I like. There's a whole bunch of things I want, but this is definitely one of them. Just like a retro style look that's taking cues from like 70s, 80s anime, and I just love the way it's animated and love the intensity of it. Oh, I just love that intro. And there's some cutscenes sprinkled throughout the game as well that use the same style, which, man, I just love that stuff. It really sets the tone for the adventure. I really love the look of the game as well. Like I said, this is an 8-bit styled game. Obviously, it's doing some things that the NES could never dream of doing, or the NES couldn't do without massive amounts of slowdown. But, you know, it retains the look, basically, of what NES games were, and certainly does that with its color palette and limited colors throughout levels, and how things are drawn and shaded. I just love that attention to detail. Obviously, games have come a long way since then, and games can look, I don't want to say better, but more sophisticated. But there's just something I really appreciate about that simplistic yet detailed look. It just really speaks to me. I can't get enough of that style, and I'm always tickled when I see games that look NES style that have really amazing animations, and there's all kinds of animations and stuff like that thrown throughout Panzer Paladin. It just brings the game to life. The whole, from a visual standpoint, I cannot say enough good things about Panzer Paladin. If you don't like retro-looking games, obviously this isn't going to be for you, but for someone who really appreciates that art style, I think this, or I don't even know if it's an art, I guess it's an art style nowadays. It was a necessity back in the day. But if you like that kind of stuff, there's so many bells and whistles here and so much attention to detail that it's just a gorgeous experience from start to finish. I was fully expecting to really love the game's soundtrack, and as I was playing, there are plenty of tunes that I really do enjoy. A whole bunch of songs where, you know, it gets your toes tapping and it feels good for the action and they fit really well with the stage. Then there were some other tracks where I was like, oh, it's okay. But with anything music related, be it a game or an album, I like to listen to the songs again before I make a final decision on them. And I have been listening to the soundtrack for Panzer Paladin outside of the game, and the music is really clicking for me. The songs that I wasn't too crazy about first time through, I heard the second time and the third time, and I was like, these are good. These are really good. It just might be sometimes maybe the action on screen is taking so much of your focus that the music is not standing out like it could or should. The same kind of thing happened for me with Mega Man 9 and 10. Mega Man 9, I loved that soundtrack, blown away by it. Mega Man 10, I was like, oh, there's some good songs in here, but overall I'm a little disappointed. Then I listened to that soundtrack a few more times, I'm like, man, this is good, it's just in a different way good. And Panzer Paladin is really good. I really, really love the soundtrack, so I'm interested to see how other people feel, but the soundtrack is a very unique mix of traditional chiptune stuff thrown in with real instruments. So songs will have electric guitar or real drums or all sorts of other instruments thrown throughout, but with the backing of traditional chiptune sounds. And it creates a really unique vibe. It creates a really unique experience as far as audio goes. And the more I listen to the soundtrack, the more I really appreciate it. Alright, let's get into what Panzer Paladin is all about. You play as a girl who's riding in this mech. I believe the girl is named Blaze and the mech is named Grit. I think that's right. And you are out to stop these evil monsters. I don't know. Let's call them monsters. Who are being summoned to Earth through these evil imbued weapons, and each monster is like the keeper of a weapon, and when you defeat them you get the weapon, and then eventually you'll defeat all the monsters and you'll transition up to a whole bunch of levels that take place in another aspect of the game. I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but that's what's going on here. So you run through traditional 2D side-scrolling levels and you beat up enemies along the way. You do some platforming. There's hidden secrets along the way. Mostly it's one-ups, but there's very much Castlevania-style hidden things. You'll crack walls to find weapons hidden within walls. And that's what you do. So you go through a level, you explore it, you find hidden stuff, you get to a mid-boss, then you get to a final boss of each stage, and that's that. Panzer Paladin, throughout its gameplay, pays tribute to so many NES games. I should have kept a list, but there are little mechanics and little nods and sound effects to so many classic NES games. I've already mentioned Castlevania, but there's certainly some Mega Man in there. There's Bionic Commando, there's Blaster Master, there's Ninja Gaiden. There's so many games in here that are referenced through mechanics. But the best part about Panzer Paladin is it takes all those elements and combines them into something unique, and then throws in its own unique elements as well. So it doesn't just feel like, hey, remember Mega Man? This is kind of like Mega Man. There's certainly numerous throwbacks as far as gameplay mechanics go to Mega Man, but the game in and of itself ends up feeling like something brand new created from the skeletons of other games. And I find that so interesting, because when a game basically takes stuff from previous big hits from other companies, sometimes it just feels too much like a ripoff. But Panzer Paladin doesn't feel like a ripoff, and I think that has to do with how the weapon system is created, because the weapon mechanic is one you deal with from the beginning to the end of the game. It's very important, it has some unique features to it, and I really have to explain it for you to understand what makes it so interesting. Alright, I'm going to try and get every aspect of weapons here because it's very important. So, you fight with weapons, obviously, and you collect weapons as you go through the game. Enemies will drop them. You'll find them hidden in walls, like I said, if you break down walls. And they're all different kinds of weapons. There's swords, and clubs, and scythes, and, man, there's just so many sticks, and a chainsaw. There's weapons all over the place. And you will collect them all as you play through the game, and they all will break. No matter what weapon you have, it's gonna break. Now, each weapon has a different level of durability, so it can take more hits. It has a different strength as well, and it also has a different ability if you decide to break it. And that's something that's really interesting and really helps you during gameplay. So you'll have a weapon, and it'll give you, let's say it doesn't matter what it is, but let's say it's getting close to breaking. You could throw it at an enemy for a final hit, or you could break the weapon yourself and get some of the power-ups that it gives you. So a weapon, when it's broken, will give you better durability on other weapons. It'll give you a small amount of health, a large amount of health, even full health replenish. It'll let you repel shots that enemies fire at you. It'll give you wings, so you can jump and keep flapping over holes, so you get like an unlimited jump basically for a short amount of time. So all these different attributes that the weapons give you directly relate to gameplay. So, say you're fighting a boss that you're having a really tough time with. You can go into your inventory and you have 4 slots for weapons that you're carrying on you, but you have access to your entire inventory, which is I don't know how many weapons. I mean, there's tons. You'll even though weapons break all the time, you'll never run out of weapons because you pick them up all over the place. Some weapons might be better than others because of their reach or whatever, but you'll have plenty to choose from. So yeah, say you're going into a boss battle and you're having trouble beating them, and you're like, I need some more health to get through this. Well, you can put weapons in your inventory that when you break them will give you health replenishment. Full health or a large amount of health is certainly helpful. So you go into the enemy, or you go into the boss fight, you're still having trouble, and when you get close to losing health, or dying I should say, you can break the weapon and it'll refill your health and you just keep going. So depending on what you need, stronger attack, stronger defense, weapons will do that too when you break them. You can basically build a layout on the fly that'll give you what you need to help you get through a section. So even, like I said, for platforming, if you're having trouble, you can crack a weapon that will give you wings and you can just fly over a certain segment and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So it's actually really interesting. It's kind of like an on-the-fly difficulty slide where if you find you're having trouble with a certain spot, you'll most likely have a weapon that can be broken to help you get past it. And I want to mention that this mechanic isn't thrown in there as some superfluous element. It matters. I used it during gameplay. It definitely helped. Obviously, there's going to be people who do runs where they're like, no breaking weapons to see how good they are. That's fine, but when I was going through, there were some bosses that gave me trouble, and I used weapons to break and get more health. There were sections where I wanted to strengthen a weapon that I had, so I did the durability up, and then I used that one longer than I could have before. So you do use this. It's really great, and I really love the way that it's implemented. You're constantly able to dive in and make these changes as you go, and it can be extremely helpful. So it's that mechanic that really flavors the whole experience, and the rest of Panzer Paladin are the aspects that pay tribute to other classic NES games. So the level layout and design is like Mega Man, as in like you'll have a certain amount of stages and they each have bosses, and then after you defeat them you go to an end game segment that has another level or a certain amount of bosses before you get to the end. And then each stage is traditional platforming. You're just jumping and attacking. You have a backdash as well, which is certainly helpful. And then the Blaster Master mechanic comes in because you are able to exit your mech and you run around as a little tiny character, just like you do in Blaster Master. Now you can do that on your own. You can jump out whenever you want, or that will be forced upon you when your mech loses all of its health. So if your mech gets hit too much and the health is gone, the little character will pop out, and they have a tiny health bar, and they have a whip, like an energy whip that they attack enemies with. So this will obviously be much harder to make it through stages like this, but it's certainly doable, and that helped me on numerous occasions. There were quite a few boss fights where I ended up almost dying. My mech got destroyed, and I was just a little character. But I managed to hang in there and land the final blow on the boss and take them out just as the little character. And I can't stress to you how great that feels when you're on the brink of death and you have this little tiny character who can take one or two hits and you manage to defeat the boss. It just feels great. So yeah, it's traditional 2D platforming, and it's there's a lot to do and see. There's a lot of stages to visit. There's a lot of variety in enemies. There's some enemies you'll see over and over again, but there's still enemies that are stage specific. Some really fun platforming sections. There's not really much in the way of gameplay where you feel cheated, like you didn't see an enemy coming, or you didn't see a hole coming, or the game kind of screws you over and you have to replay it. It's very fair, pretty much. It's just pretty challenging. So if you like old school 2D games, then I have no doubt you're going to like Panzer Paladin, but that doesn't mean that everything in here is perfect. As I said, there are some things that I had some issue with. Some issues were small, some issues were big, but none of them were so big that they ruined the experience for me. Just things that if I were making the game, I would tweak, or if there's a sequel in the works, I would hope they would address. Just a couple things that could be changed that I think would make a considerable difference. Alright, first up, the stages themselves. They are expertly designed. They are a lot of fun. They present a lot of unique platforming sections and enemy fights and all that good stuff. But they are pretty long. They are definitely longer than what you would find in a traditional 2D platformer. Much longer than a Mario level, much longer than a Castlevania level or a Mega Man level. Like they are pretty long. Almost every stage I got to a point where I was like, oh man, this is still going. And you know, you would say if you love a game, of course you want more of it. And I do love Panzer Paladin, but I feel like the levels got almost to the point where they overstayed their welcome. Like, I feel like if maybe a couple screens were taken out, it would have made for a punchier experience. It's hard. Some people might play these long levels and really enjoy them. I didn't dislike them. I was just shocked that, you know, stage after stage after stage, these levels continue to be pretty long. And that goes in hand with the checkpoint system. Because basically you have two checkpoints. One is for the mid-boss and one is for the final boss. So if you make it to the screen before the mid-boss and you die, because of how long these stages are, you gotta go through a lot of stuff over again, and you could be like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to go back that far. And again, a lot of that, people might say that's how it was back in the NES days, and that's certainly true. There were plenty of games where you would be punished for dying and be sent back all the way to the beginning of the level, so I get it. But I feel like maybe if there was one more checkpoint, or maybe if the levels were shortened a little bit, it could have made a very big difference. Speaking of the mid-boss, that's another problem that I have with the game. So just quickly, I want to say that to use checkpoints, you have to slam one of your weapons down into like a block, and that counts as locking in the checkpoint. You don't have to do that, but that means then your checkpoint is not secured, and if you die like at the checkpoint before the boss, then you'll have to go all the way back to the beginning. But anyway, you lock in your mid-boss checkpoint, you go to the mid-boss, and it's this horse guy. And you take him out and whatever, and then you go to the next stage, and the mid-boss is this horse guy. And then you go to the next stage, and the mid-boss is this horse guy. Now, as far as I know, I think every stage has you fight the horse guy. Maybe one of them doesn't, but I'm pretty sure every single one does. It's the same horse guy. You do the same fight every time. He doesn't learn new things as you go along. He does the same exact stuff. So, you know, there's, I think, 17 stages, but by, like, the 5th or 6th time you fight this guy, you're like, okay, I get it. Like, I don't want to fight this guy again. He's kind of like the Proto Man of Mega Man. Well, Mega Man was Proto Man in 3? I don't remember, but Proto Man, where in Mega Man games, Proto Man would jump in and you get the little whistle song and then you fight him, but he wasn't in every stage. This guy is in every stage. And I will say he is important to the story, which you learn as it goes on. But still, if you're going to have him every stage, spice him up a little bit. Change something about him. Add in a new attack. Make platforms so you have to fight him in a different style. But all these are just flat levels, same guy, same attack patterns. At least you get a good weapon every time you defeat him, so there's that. But fighting the same character 17 times is just... it's too much. There's such great variety in the bosses. The bosses are amazing. I love their designs. They have so many different types of attacks. There's small bosses, there's large bosses. They're all really interesting. And I feel like they put so much into the bosses and then they're like, we'll just have one sub-boss. It's so disappointing. If anything, maybe have the horse guy appear in half the amount of levels, but still retain the checkpoints in the level. So each stage has a mid-checkpoint. You just don't fight the mid-boss again, but they got him in every level, and I was like, ooh, this is a little much. There's also a system that I feel is really, really underused. So after you defeat a boss and you exit a stage, you have a chance to go back to this, I don't know who she is, some sort of mechanic who, like, beefs up your mech, and you can cash in a certain amount of weapons you collected to upgrade your mech, and every time you do that, you extend your health bar by a little bit. So you do that, I don't know how many times, let's say 5 times, and then that's it. Like, you get the health upgrades for your extended health bar, but that's all there is. There's no other upgrades, at least not that I saw. You can't upgrade anything else, and I feel like that's such a missed opportunity. You should be able to cash in your weapons to get other kinds of upgrades, maybe like a double jump, or maybe a shield for one hit, or maybe something like weapons will throw out like a fireball or something until you get hit once and then that goes away. There's so many different things you could do, even if like it was something like you can unlock customizations for your mech to make it look a little bit different. You know, that wouldn't be as great as upgraded abilities, but it would be something. All you get here is the upgraded health bar and then it's over, and you do that fairly early. At least I did. You max that health bar out maybe within the first 5 stages, and then that's it. Nothing else comes of it. So it's a shame that it's a great idea, they just didn't extend it enough. There needs to be more options and abilities you can get, and I feel that really would have added a whole new layer to the game. Those are my gripes with Panzer Paladin, but as I said, overall, man, I really enjoy this game, and just the little issues that I have with it make me so hopeful and excited that there's a sequel, because what they got going on here is fantastic. It's so well done. It's such a love letter to those classic games, and as I said, it does enough to feel like its own thing as well. It's just expertly made. Like, the most important part of the game is the platforming, and the fighting mechanics and just all that classic stuff from old school games, and that is nailed to a T here. It feels excellent, it controls excellent, it just plays really, really well. And as I said, the stages are phenomenal. There's so many varied designs, so many places that you go, and they each feel like their own thing. They don't feel like a duplicate of a stage you've already been in. And then there's other stuff I didn't even get to touch on, like fighting enemies who have shields, where you get, if you've ever played Zelda 2, and then you know that there's enemies that have shields where you have to hit high or low to land a blow on them depending on where they're blocking. Well, that's in this game too for some enemies, and it just adds in a neat little mechanic for some of the fights, and some are harder to do than others, so I really appreciate that stuff. But yeah, it's if you love NES games, you're gonna love this game. I really want to stress that the points that I didn't like of the game are far surpassed by what I really did enjoy. I had such a good time with this game. There's stuff that you unlock when you beat it too, for another reason to go in. I don't want to get into spoiler territory with that, but there is a reason to go back and play through things again. And as there's other stuff too. There's like you can make your own weapons with a sprite editor. Like you can make a sword or whatever the hell you want. I am not a sprite artist, so I suck, but I imagine people are going to make some awesome stuff because they can upload these designs online. There's a whole speedrunner mode, there's a boss rush mode, so there's plenty of stuff to do after you've finished the game. And like I said, it was a longer experience than I expected because of how long the stages are, and there's more quote-unquote end game levels than you would expect from this kind of game. So I got more out of it than I thought, and I'm eager to see how people speedrun this game, because I know there's all kinds of stuff in there to really maximize what you can do in a level on pass-through section. So I'm no good at that stuff, but I'm excited to see what people can do. I think this is going to be a really good one for speedrunners. But overall, Panzer Paladin, absolutely loved it. It's a great game. Tribute did an awesome job with it. Very excited to see what others think, and I'm really hopeful it finds success because it deserves it. Alright, my friends, that's today's video. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. It's very much appreciated. Also, a huge thank you to those of you who support the Patreon. Helps me do videos like this. Helps with the site, the podcast, social media, all that good stuff. So if you want to learn more about the Patreon, which is just $1, you can check out a link in the description below. But again, that's it for today. I'll be back with something tomorrow as long as I got something interesting to show you. So until then, have a lovely day and a lovely evening, and I'll see you in a few short hours.